The slot machine continues pushing forward.
Diaz! Oh, that shot! That is so sharp!
It's the rule of the Premier League that when one bald manager drops from the peak of the mountain, he must be replaced by another bald one. The Dutch Lex Luthor.
I saw someone bald over there as well.
Slot has Liverpool dominating in ways that I don't even think the most optimistic of Liverpool fans could have imagined.
When I see Liverpool, it looks like they're trying to win it. I see other teams play, they look like, let's not lose it.
But what if I told you that the true Slot revolution hasn't even started yet? The only thing shinier than Slot's beautiful bald head is this club's future. Let's discuss.
Yeah, I think everyone thought that it was going to be difficult, but not Arne.
It's always interesting to see how teams begin to embody the qualities of their managers. Under Klopp, Liverpool were loud, aggressive, relentless. Heavy metal football inspired by their manager who wore his emotions on a sleeve. Liverpool are still relentless, they're still as direct as before, but now they have more control in their approach.
It's a mix of the old and certainly something of the new. It's kind of rotating in midfield, and there seems to be a bit more patience and it's slightly more thoughtful defensively.
The calm, more calculated approach is reflective of Slot's calm nature.
Probably one of the reasons why I'm composed is because I have a lot of trust in my team. The work I had to do is already been done.
Don't get it twisted, Slot is still very charismatic. Look at how he approached the Salah contract situation questions that were posed to him by the media.
So probably I'm more out than in. So
the only thing I can say is if I look at my lineups, Mo is more in than out. That quote I can give you.
But overall, he's more calm than Klopp. He's more neutral, although even he loses it sometimes. This is what Premier League reffing does to someone.
If there are too many decisions going against you, then even I can lose my composure.
What makes Slot so special is that he's very adaptable.
It depends on the other team as well. So we change a lot.
They have a base identity. Everyone knows they're going to come out in the 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, however you want to describe it. They know that Slot's teams are going to be aggressive, direct, they're going to try and score lots of goals, but they're also incredibly flexible depending on the conditions of the match.
Explained a lot how positioning is so important in football and where you are, even when the ball's completely on the other side, where to be, and that changes throughout games and for each and every game depending on how the opposition is set up. So
we have seen Slot push Trent into the midfield as an inverted fullback, but some games he will keep the wingbacks wide. We have seen him use Luis Diaz as a striker to make the attack unpredictable. It's crazy, he put a left winger up front and Liverpool ended up spanking not just Bayer Leverkusen, but also Tottenham. Everyone knows the general style that Liverpool want to play, but the way they punish teams isn't always the same. I think a perfect example of what I'm talking about and how quickly Slot can change things on the fly is Liverpool's match against Fulham. Now Fulham, they're a difficult team to beat. We've seen them pick up points against Arsenal and Chelsea. So to go down to them early and get a red card, it's a nightmare situation. Yet Slot began to immediately change things around. He experimented a ton. First he pushed Trent more forward, then used Gomez as a right center back for a back three. Then he brought Trent back and moved Gomez to the left back position, with Gravenberch moving as one of the center backs. Then McAllister and Szoboszlai as the two pivots. In the same match, he essentially kept moving around pieces until he found a lineup that he liked. Liverpool ended up drawing, but you wouldn't have been able to tell they were down to 10 men. Their control of the match didn't waver one bit. Now, of course, there's a lot of football to be played, but that game really made me a believer that Slot can win the Premier League with this Liverpool side. Because the team's fluidity, it's very different than when I watch Arsenal and Chelsea that I feel like play the same style, realistically no matter their opponents. They go through the same struggles no matter the context of the matches. I mentioned Liverpool never losing control despite being down to 10 men against Fulham, and I think control is the perfect word to describe Slot's style of play.
The main thing is in possession where we are more patient, we have different patterns and different movements to understand where the spaces are.
And one of the best ways to maintain control in any circumstance is to remain patient. Slot himself has stated that he spends most of the time not thinking about tactics, but instead how he can articulate his ideas to his players in the best and most simple way possible.
Most of my time that I think about football, people think that I think about the tactic sports, but that's the opposite of what is true. The most time where I think about football is how can I find a way to bring more energy in you or bring more energy in the teams.
That's why even when Liverpool are down a goal or things are not going their way, you never see them panic. And because of that, there's a sense of inevitability about this team. The same feeling that I used to get when I watched Pep's Manchester City team. In the sense that you watch them play and sometimes they're not in the game or they're being dominated or they're not playing their best, making sloppy decisions, sloppy mistakes. But you know at one point they're gonna get a goal. You know at one point they're gonna secure the win. A great example of this was the Leicester City game. They go down in the 6th minute to an Ayew goal and then the rest of the half play really sloppy football. 73% possession, but they only forced one save from the keeper. In the second half though, Liverpool came out sharper. Better movement, more composure on the ball. They began to carve Leicester open. In the first half, Liverpool were spamming crosses. According to The Athletic, Liverpool had attempted 33 crosses, 19 more than any of their previous first halves. This made life really easy for Leicester because they could just park the bus, camp everyone in around the net, and just head away the clearances and hit on the counter. But in the second half, there was a clear change of strategy after Slot had the halftime to fine-tune his team's approach. In the second half, they only attempted 11 more crosses until the final whistle. It was just yet another example of Slot showing his ability to change games from the bench. This time, it was Slot's intelligence to tell his players to not get dragged into the trap of just spamming in crosses when it wasn't working. Now in the beginning, I said that the Slot revolution hasn't even started yet. And I said this because historically, Slot's teams actually really hit their stride in his second season. Take his time at Feyenoord for example. When he first joined the club, he did really well in the first season, getting him to the final of the Conference League and finishing 3rd in the Eredivisie. In fact, he was awarded the Eredivisie Manager of the Year. But then in the next season, Feyenoord ended up winning the league and making it to the quarterfinals of the Europa League. A massive jump, especially considering that Feyenoord don't have the finances that PSV and Ajax had.
But to win it with this club, I think that is even more special because this club is not used to winning it that many times.
Keep in mind too, when he took over the Feyenoord job, he had to rebuild the team because Dick Advocaat had done such a poor job. At Liverpool though, Klopp left them with a very nice base to work with. People forget, but this exact same crop of players was at one point in the race to win a quadruple. They were in first place for a very long time in the Premier League. They reached the quarters in both the FA Cup and Europa League, and of course they won the Carabao Cup. It also helped that not only was the team good, but the players and the profiles of them fit exactly how Slot wanted to play because his style is not very different from Jurgen Klopp's style.
That the differences are not that big, so there are only small differences between Jurgen and me, and the general idea of how we want to play football is I think quite similar.
Look at United for example. Not only did Ruben Amorim get a bunch of players who earned good, but he also got a bunch of profile players that don't fit the way he wants to play at all. Since Slot and Klopp's style of play is very similar, Slot didn't have to come in and make huge changes. He just had to make some small tweaks.
Yeah, he's done a tremendous job over here, and I'm really happy with that as a fan. But now as his successor, I think his successor we would say. He left, like I just said, Liverpool in the best possible way, I think.
It's why despite no signings in the summer, the team is playing amazing. Liverpool also didn't need any new signings because Slot ended up rejuvenating some players of the club to such a high level that they're essentially like new signings. Gravenberch went from being a player barely used to arguably the best midfielder in the entire league. If the Premier League had a Most Improved Player award, Gravenberch would be the outright winner. Gravenberch had shown some flashes under Klopp, especially in the Europa League, but an ankle injury slowed him down and he didn't really fit Klopp's system. Because you gotta keep in mind, Klopp was playing a 4-3-3 with one holding midfielder, and Gravenberch didn't really suit the role of the sole number 6. That's why Klopp used Endo there. Now Gravenberch probably would have been really good in one of the number 8 roles, but McAllister and Szoboszlai were already established, and Klopp, he didn't like to rotate that much. As a result, Gravenberch just couldn't break into the first team. But Slot saw his potential. Maybe it is the Dutch connection. After all, Slot had seen Gravenberch at his best in the Eredivisie, so he knew all of his strengths and weaknesses. But I think Gravenberch in general just fits Slot's style of play a lot better. Slot's controlled style of play benefits Gravenberch more because he's excellent on the ball. He can keep the ball well, and this gives him the freedom to dictate the tempo. Gravenberch has the ability to maintain possession and make the right pass out of pressure, which is vital to the way that Slot wants to play. That control that Slot is looking for cannot be achieved without a midfielder who is not just an exceptional passer, but has the footballing IQ to know when to carry the ball forward and when to keep the ball. Like, I've genuinely seen Gravenberch break an entire press all by himself because he's such an elite carrier of the ball. His style of play is rare. Someone that tall who's so technically gifted on the ball. It's the same style you saw from Paul Pogba, from Yaya Toure. It's such a joy to watch and so effective. Another Dutch player that was rejuvenated was Cody Gakpo. Another player that unfortunately just wasn't utilized to his best potential under Klopp. Klopp kept trying to use him as a pure number 9 and as a central midfielder. This guy is at his best as a left wing cutting inside. That's where he was playing his best football at PSV and for the Dutch national team, playing on that left hand side with the freedom to either cut inside and cross or take a shot on his own. Well, Slot understood this and played him in that exact role. Look at Gakpo's goal against Leicester. That's what he can do, and he's done it all season. In fact, he's been so good that Slot has resorted to playing Luis Diaz up front just so the two of them can play together instead of him having to rotate each one of them. Now, it's not just because of a Dutch connection that these players have been rejuvenated. It's Slot's fantastic man management. Look at what he did with Curtis Jones. Now, Jones was actually a regular starter at times for Klopp, but I feel like his game has really elevated under Slot. He's scoring goals, doing them in big games. He's an absolute engine in the heart of the midfield, someone who works really hard but is also very technically gifted on the ball. In fact, he's been so good that oftentimes Szoboszlai has been dropped to play Curtis Jones in that number 10 role. Slot really understands how to get players to buy into his system. Look at how he handled the Trent situation in the beginning of the season after the Englishman was mad that he got subbed out. Look at how he's handled the contract situations with the media. Despite constant questions, he has always brushed it aside and never given them any quotes or clips that can be used to churn headlines. It's a really tough situation when you think about it because Slot is the new manager. The fact that Liverpool's 3 best players are all going into the summer without a contract extension, it has nothing to do with him. But unfortunately, he has to be the face, and I think he's done a great job of deflecting, of responding in a way that just doesn't create any more drama. The other great example of Slot's fantastic man management is that players are constantly being rotated, but nobody has had their ego hurt. Sometimes Darwin Núñez starts, sometimes he comes off the bench. Sometimes Szoboszlai starts, sometimes he comes off the bench. Gakpo wasn't starting in the beginning of the season, he was rotating with Luis Diaz, but now he's a regular. Now let's be honest, a big part of this is because of the fact that Liverpool keep winning. If they drop points or went on a bad run of form, a lot of those guys that are being benched or rotated, they would probably get a little bit upset and more headlines would come out about them not being happy that they're not being utilized to their full potential. But I still think it's a testament to how good Slot is as a manager, that he's been able to get the players to buy into the goal as a team instead of worrying about their individual numbers and stats. But I also think it shows how deep the squad is. I mean, they have 2 quality players per position. Kelleher stepped up when Alisson was injured. Connor Bradley put in a wonderful performance on a big Champions League night against Mbappe when Trent wasn't available. Konate was injured and Joe Gomez came in and the defense still looked decent. And because their depth is so good, it makes it interesting who Liverpool want to bring in. I feel like a good striker could really benefit them. I mean, Darwin Núñez has been decent, but I don't think he's done enough to justify the fee. And Jota, well, it'll be nice to have another player to rotate with him. Maybe a proper backup to Salah, maybe a right back in case Trent goes to Real Madrid. It's of course still way too early to say this, but Klopp and Slot seem to be following a similar path to Shankly and Paisley. Klopp, like Shankly, was considered the man, an intelligent, charismatic leader who took Liverpool from the bottom to the top, bringing them back to being one of the most elite clubs in world football. Shankly was a man of the people. Without him, Anfield doesn't have the same link to the fans and the players. Klopp was the same way. He embodied the you never walk alone mentality. Both laid the foundation. Now Paisley, he himself was an incredible manager, and he was able to use the foundation set by Shankly to win 20 trophies for Liverpool in just 9 years. Slot now has the opportunity to do the same thing. Use a strong base foundation to propel Liverpool to even higher heights. Will he achieve it? Only time will tell. But with a captain like Van Dijk, I don't see why not. To see just how good the Dutchman is, you have to check out this video right here.